Hey everyone, please be seated. Welcome if you're joining us here online. Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification course. I will be your teacher for this evening, and we will be continuing in, of course, the responsibility unit. And we are in chapter 5. Yes, chapter 5. And we'll go back a little bit here. Just want to get all my books and everything lined up. We'll go back a little bit here to where David left off last class. He kind of finished off in the procedure number 4. And let's just go back there real quick and read that or look at that, because this is where he left off. He left off here on 82. And we'll pick up on 82 there. That was your homework. Do we have the volunteer that's going to be collecting the homework assignments this evening? No volunteer? Okay, all right. I won't. I'll accept the dog ate it this time, but no, we'll go over that a little bit this time, which was something that you could do or assign to your students as a homework assignment on page 82 under that Think About It section. Let's flip back to procedure 5 on lesson plan 5, page D. It says, tell students that irresponsible choices due to a lack of self-control and discipline can lead to serious consequences. Have students read the section Life on the Flip Side found on pages 83 through 84. Then listen to the poem One Bad Choice, which I will be reciting that this evening, from the teacher's audio lesson, which, if you get the teacher's manual, all that comes in your pack there. Allow students to follow along on page 85 in their handbooks. Guide class discussion by asking the following questions. How was the character irresponsible in the thing there? And then there will be answers that follows. Question B, in what way did he lack self-control? And there'll be answers that follows that. And then C, what was the result of his actions? So let's go over and let's take a look first at our homework that we would have had to do last class there. Okay, there, just bring that up. And this is where David left off here under this section entitled Think About It. And then there's just 3 questions there. And it says, list 3 areas you can be more disciplined in. Now, this is something on an individual basis. It's not something that necessarily is a right or wrong answer, but it's to get the child, the student, specifically, as the top of the page says, to think about it. Think of some things. Now, we just went through all these areas and showing the importance of responsibility, discipline, consistency, maintenance or the maintaining of self-control or of a responsible character and the ingredients for it. So now at this point, they've kind of got a lot of different ingredients presented to them. Now they can think about what they've covered in the lesson and see how it could be applied to their own personal lives. And so they're going to have different things. Some might be, I can be more diligent, disciplined in doing my chores, following my parents' instructions, asking them before I maybe go out, asking for permission before I do things, whatever the case might be, be more proactive in getting my homework done, or whatever the case might be. But there will vary, but should include doing chores immediately, keeping up with homework. And that's one of the things that I tell my children or students that I come across where they're given a task or given instructions, and then later on you check back and say, was this done? Was this completed? And they go, oh, I forgot. And I kind of remind them gently, well, that's why it's important to get things done immediately, right? If you're not doing something at that time, get what you're instructed to do immediately. Less opportunity for you to forget if you do it right away. So doing chores immediately, keeping up with homework. There's nothing like getting behind, not only on homework, but when you become an adult and you start getting behind on things in general, responsibilities at work, things people have asked you to do, the to-do list that your wife might give you, which is never ending, but, bills, whatever the case might be, once you start that pattern of getting behind on those things, then it becomes really, really, really hard to catch up. It goes back to the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. It's easier to just maintain a consistent pattern of behavior or getting something done than it is to go, you know what, I'll get to it tomorrow, But like someone said, I think some singer said, tomorrow might never come, right? It's always going to be a tomorrow. Well, there's always going to be a tomorrow, whether you're here or not is one thing or the other, but there'll always be tomorrow and there always will be an excuse as to why that we can feed ourselves, that we can make up in our own minds as to why we should go ahead and just push that off to a little bit later. Right? We can wait a little bit. My most liked show is getting ready to come on. Buck Rogers is going to be on at 7:00. Oh wait, I might be showing my age there. Or whatever the case might be. And when I was younger, now all of us, we've been in this situation when we were younger. Now some of us, we might have absolutely loved doing homework. I was not one of those people. All right, I'll tell you that right now. Unless it was go home and practice sampling what you made in home economics class, the cookies or whatever, or going home. We never got homework, I noticed, for physical education. We never got homework for recess or play or anything like that. It was always the things we didn't really want to do. But you can always find an excuse to put something off. But keeping up with these things will prevent the struggle or the rush at the very end. Like someone once said, lack of procrastination on your part doesn't constitute an emergency on my part. Because you waited to the last minute doesn't mean now I've got to hurry up and do what I need to do so that you can get what you need to get done. And this is a lesson that this is a challenge that we as teachers face a little bit differently now in 2024 than when these books were put out in the early 2000s. Because there's so many more time-consuming things, so many more distractions for our young people now that can get their mind off of what's important. And those things appeal fun. They appear to be fun and exciting to them. Where when you compared doing homework, getting my chores done, walking the dog, cutting the grass, whatever the case, those things are boring. The grass isn't going anywhere, they might say. But instilling within them this sense of responsibility, because that's what we're covering in this lesson, and helping them to see the importance of why developing a responsible character is important. Like I mentioned before, eat them lima beans. Get them out of the way. Eat those lima beans, and then there's plenty of room for the chicken. I would rather go to sleep with a little chicken on my taste buds than lima beans on my taste buds. I might end up having one of those nightmares or something. There's a lima bean chasing me. But it's important, and my parents did that. They instilled within me the importance of getting the needs done first. And as teachers, we can't assume that parents are doing that, right? When they come to our class and learn these things, we have to teach them with the mindset that they're not getting this education anywhere else. Not at home, not in any other class, especially not in the society that they're living in. So we're their light, their guide for them learning to develop, and of course, we're talking about here, maintain a positive character. Or obeying those in authority while maintaining a positive attitude. Now, the two have to go together, so instill that in the minds of the students, well, I did it, what's the big deal? I did it. But did you do it with a positive attitude, right? There's the challenge right there. Even us as adults, there are a lot of things that we don't like to do, and sometimes it shows on our face, Hey, can you go over there and pick up those piles of dog droppings? Isn't there somebody else that can do that? Well, sure, there's 8 billion people on the world, in the earth right now, but I'm asking, can you go and do it, right? So sometimes we have to dig deep within ourselves to find that positive attitude. And it is a lot of positive self-talk, right? Why wouldn't a person want to do that? Is it an ego thing? Is it a pride thing? Is it where they think that that's beneath them? Well, if they're standing on it, it would be, right? But there would be something in there that would constitute or be a part of or be fed from a negative character that would keep them from wanting to serve in that capacity. If somebody said, "Hey, you mind lifting us off this 747? You mind doing the honors and taking us off the runway?" "Oh, sure, yeah, I'd be real glad to do that, you know." Yeah, well, what's the difference? You're being asked to serve. You're being asked to do something to benefit other people. Okay, so a lot of times we have to go back and assess our mindset when it comes to this attitude. Remember what your attitude is. It's the way you think and feel about something. So if we're doing something, but it's accompanied with a negative attitude as adults, and as we learn to do this and follow the instructions and guidance in the Peaceful Solution, then we're better equipped to give practical, coupling it with the Peaceful Solution, practical steps to guide the students in how to assess their thoughts and change those thoughts so that they can have a positive attitude towards them. Because things do go a lot smoother when we have a positive attitude about it, right? Well, let me go ahead and get this done. Let me just get it out of the way so that I can do the things that I want to do or that I would like to do, okay? Number 2 there. What changes would you make in order to be more disciplined in these areas? Now, it might not say this here, but what we're seeing here is kind of subtly showing the students how to set a positive goal. And in this case, it's the goal of being disciplined. So the goal is, well, what do we need to do? What areas can you be more disciplined in? So they're going to choose certain areas, 3 areas. Then they're going to make steps, right? They're going to make a plan as to how they can become more disciplined in that area. Because that's the procedure for everything, right? I'd like to go to Texas. Well, I live in Ohio. Okay, that's my goal, to get to Texas. Well, what steps do I need to take to get to Texas? Do I have a vehicle? Can I rent a vehicle? Should I fly? Should I take the Greyhound? Am I walking? Am I riding my bike? What am I doing? Am I using my teleportation device, right? So you've got to take all these things into consideration, and those are the steps. Those are the procedures or the plans that you would have to take in order to fulfill that goal. And they don't see that, but you as the teachers should see and understand, okay, this is incorporating a little bit more goal setting right here and them in understanding their purpose. So answers might vary, but it should include at least make a list of chores to do. One of the things we covered in the Peaceful Solution when it comes to setting goals is shows that you are dedicated to your goals, serious about them, when you write them down. You're taking a thought, something that's not concrete, right? It's just frequency. It's just, we don't even know. It's just something that flashes on a what's the machine that measures your brain waves? Not the EKG that measures your heart, right? Whatever the thing is that they put on the brain and it shows the electrical activity, right? Is it the EKG? Okay. EEG, electroencephalography. It's the EEG. All right. Well, it's one of those EEGs, right? Not the BGs. So it's setting your mind in advance, or you have a thought, and then you put it down on paper. Well, when you put it down on paper, it actually requires you to think about what you want to write down. Then you're writing it down. And if you're speaking it, but you know what? You're also seeing it. It's going back into your eyes. If you're speaking it, also it's coming out your mouth, and guess what? It's going back into your ears. So you're almost getting at least 4 of the 5 senses covered in writing that goal down. All right. And all the experts say that this is one of the first steps in successfully achieving your goals is to write these things down. It just shows you're committed to them, shows you're serious about it. So this is what making a list of chores to do. This is what would help. And it's great because when you make a list, you have a concrete something that you can go back to, a benchmark, and then you can check it off. When I make a list for doing work for the day, and I can go back to that list and check that off, I feel great, right? And I can look at that list at the end of the day and see I've got it all checked off. Now you got to be realistic about it. That's what they say. When you make goals, schedule time daily to work on it. That is to work on your homework, or paying attention when those in. Okay, and it's so beneficial when we can train our young men and women, train our students, this at a very early age in life, to follow the instructions even if they don't like doing it. Right? I tell students I've worked with, and even my children, like, you don't have to like it to do it, but you do need to do it in order to be successful. Okay. Remember, the brain, on average, right? I think it's this is the frontal cortex, one of those cortexes, doesn't fully develop until around the age 25, 26 years old. So, as teachers and parents and guides and so forth, we have to also have realistic expectations for our students. That doesn't mean that we baby and coddle them, but we have to understand that they're still in a development process. So we have to adjust our teaching and how we present things. There's not a one size fits all in teaching about character. The message is the same, but sometimes you have to somewhat adjust it because people learn at different paces. People understand differently. Some are visual, some are audio. They learn by audio, by hearing. And some actually they have to do it, or it could be a combination of any of those things for them to learn and grasp a concept. So this is why the Peaceful Solution is so well rounded, because it incorporates all of those things, right? With these activities and these enrichment activities that are given here. And then last one here, number 3, it says, how can being more disciplined in these areas make you more responsible? So now what we're getting them to do is to think about the rewards that come when they develop and practice this responsible characteristic, this characteristic of being responsible. All right. And answers might vary, but should include consistently doing chores at a set time, keeping up with homework, and obeying authority. Develop self-discipline. That's what it develops. And consistent practice will help you to develop the reputation of being a responsible person, which is a reward in itself. Because when people see you as responsible, then you're more likely to be entrusted with greater responsibilities. Now, somebody might say, oh, well, greater responsibilities. That means I'm going to get more chores. It means I'm going to have to do more work. It might, but it also might mean that you have the opportunity for better things, right? This is why sometimes in a family, an older child who shows and demonstrates that characteristic consistently of being responsible, they might get more privileges, right? They might get to get a new bike, or get to go out someplace that they might really want to go to. Possibly when the family goes out to dinner, they get to choose the place that they would like to go to that time. So there are rewards that come with it, and we want the students to see and understand. Remember, we're not accentuating the negative. We're pointing out certain of these negative aspects or consequences that come when things are not done in accordance with morality. But that's just for them to know. That's for them to see and compare the things that are taking place in society, so they can go and see when they look at the news, or when they see something take place in their neighborhood, or they hear about something, they can go, okay, well, I remember talking about that in the Peaceful Solution, and that seems like that has occurred because a person didn't do this. Or if they would have been taught this and developed this characteristic and responded in this way, this fashion, then this would have been the outcome. So we want to always provide those opportunities, like David was talking about in the last class, for our students to think about what they've learned here in the Peaceful Solution. We don't ever want it to escape their minds. And that's why maintenance is so, so very important. I used to be a maintenance man. I would give it fancy names, a facility continuity engineer, and, and different types of names, But really, I was a maintenance man. I'd be the guy that knock on your doors and come and unplug your toilet, or let you in when you were locked out, or unclog your dishwasher, or fix your air conditioner, And it was a constant thing. And I remember there was a time when it was two maintenance guys. We had 156 apartment units there. It wasn't a very big facility, but it was big enough. And the one guy quit, so it was just me. Now, thankfully, at the time when he quit, our occupancy was a little bit lower than what it normally was, but it was no shortage of work to do, right? When it came to doing work orders, when it came to getting apartments ready, make readies, and just different things, changing out things, it was literally a full-time job and then some. Plus, let's not forget when people do lock themselves out, then they're calling you at 2 o'clock in the morning, hey, I locked myself out, and you got to go and let them in. So, but if that building would not have been continually maintained, toilets would be backed up, things would be leaking, walls would be damaged, right? Systems would start to break down, plumbing, electrical, heating and cooling, the things that require constant care to maintain their proper working order, they eventually begin to break down. It's like the difference between somebody living in the house and someone not living in the house. For some reason, just a person not living in the house isn't being vandalized, the house isn't being damaged, just a person not living in that house, a family not living in that house, the house starts to rapidly deteriorate. I don't know if it's the body oils or whatever it is that goes into that infrastructure, but when it has no activity, because people also maintain, they keep things clean, they keep the dust down, the varmints and everything, the vermin and the things like that, they're kept out and so forth. So it's important. Well, the main thing with this is the maintaining of our character. So like David was pointing out in the previous class, this is an ongoing thing. We can never stop, right? It's like when people, they get into a serious accident and they have like a traumatic brain injury, or they injure their spine or muscles or something like that, and maybe they're in a coma for several weeks or several months. And then when they get out of that, there's a lot of things they have to relearn. Sometimes they have to learn how to talk. They have to learn how to walk. Their muscles atrophy. And so they've got to rebuild those muscles and start working them again. Sometimes their bones start to get a little bit weak. One thing that strengthens bones, using them. Gravity. Gravity strengthens your bones. And so it's the same with our character. If we just sit back and don't do anything with it, it will begin to atrophy, or begin to waste away and get weak. Let's look at page 83 here. So this is entitled Life on the Flip Side, and this is what we covered here, 83 to 85 on Procedure 5. And it says at the very top there, when people do not maintain a responsible character, the results can be disastrous. Remember, a lifetime. You can work a lifetime to build a positive reputation through your character. Your reputation is shown through your character, how you think, you feel, and act. How people see you based on basically how you act. They don't know how you're thinking, but if they're educated, they'll know what's going on in your mind based on your actions, okay? And so that reputation, that character can be lost with one single act, just one. That's all it takes. It just takes one act for you to be considered a thief, or a violent person, or the other many other criminal activities that take place, in our society that are very commonplace right now. All it takes is one time, and that's what you're labeled as. Okay? So, again, we want to reiterate in the minds of our students, don't think it's just a one and done type thing when you make these poor choices. And like David said, sometimes there's choices out of ignorance. Sometimes there's mistakes and so forth. Sometimes there's choices because they just don't want to do something, or they do want to do something in spite of what they've been told not to do. But there's consequences that come with that. And like we covered in the respect unit, sometimes they're short term, sometimes they're long. And that is, they can come quickly or they might come way down the road. And we're going to see some examples here as we move forward. So it says these things can result, they can be disastrous. And then it says here, spur of the moment decisions. And I'm sure all of you teachers can think of another word that could sum up these four words of spur of the moment. What would you say to your students? Impulsive. That's right. Because look at the rest that follows that. It ties right into that definition of impulsivity. Spur of the moment decisions made without considering whether they're moral or immoral, right or wrong. And remember what an impulsive decision is. It's not making a decision without thinking, because we're always thinking. It's making a decision without considering the consequences. And if you're not considering the consequences, then you're not considering is what you're about to do right now, or what you're about to say, is it moral or immoral? Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it building up? Is it tearing down? Is it going to bring shame or is it going to bring honor? Right? Is it going to be respectful or disrespectful? However it needs to be classified in the particular circumstance at that time. But a person who is educated and trained in these things, they're going to stop and think. And that's why you'll see teachers and students of the Peaceful Solution who have gone through this time after time again. Sometimes when they're asked a question, they don't just blurt out an answer. They actually take the time to stop and think. Sometimes they'll even say, you know what? Let me get back to you on that. That's a great question. Let me get back to you on that. And as a teacher, there's nothing wrong with that. It's better to say something. It's more respectful and honorable to say something like that than to blurt out some, spur of the moment answer and misguide your student, right? Because they're looking at you as the teacher. They're looking at you as the guide. They're looking at you as the role model as to how they should think and act. So spur of the moment decisions made without considering whether they are moral or immoral, right or wrong, can leave a person up the creek without a paddle. And there are various names for that creek we won't mention here. But that word spur, you think about it, it just means to make or to develop faster. To make or develop faster. Have you ever seen, I know in Texas here we have a few of them, probably some, probably some in various other cities and states, but they're like what they call spur roads or spur routes, right? Well, those are simply shorter routes. They're roads or routes that branch off of a longer route to get from one point to another quicker, okay? And spur of the moment decisions are essentially a shortcut decision. You don't want to stop. You don't want to think about it. You don't have time for it. Just just go ahead and do it, right? And sometimes parents do that, right? They're in a rush. They're tied down with a whole bunch of things. They're trying to get something done, and the child comes, Mom or Dad, can I do it? I don't care. Just go ahead and do it, right? And then it's later on. Well, why did you do that? Well, you said go ahead and do it. Well, I wasn't paying attention. You should know better. Well, you're the adult, So we have to be very careful about the things especially as an adult, because the things we say and do impact the child more, right? The things we do more so than what we say, but we have to be very mindful to stop and think sometime, because there can be consequences that can be undone. You can't go back and change them sometimes. So we want to get them to thinking about this. Yeah, it takes a little bit of time, possibly a few seconds or so, to think about things, but do it because it's very beneficial. Remember what we talked about with impulsivity there? Just as a reminder, on page 88 of the character unit under room to grow, it says in that last paragraph at the top, that last sentence in the top paragraph on page 88, it says impulsive means to act on emotions without careful consideration of the consequences of your actions. Now, what is the thing that should not be done there in that sentence? Acting on emotions, right? Remember, we covered emotions in the self-control unit, not only self-control, but in the self-control unit, and how to control your emotions to your advantage. Now, emotions are there. Remember what they do. They tell you things you like and things you don't like, things you agree with, things you don't agree with, and so forth. but they're not supposed to be the guiding factor in your decision-making process, right? Facts, morality, rules, that's the factor that should guide a person in their decision-making process, okay? And then it says here, keep in mind that every action, even the ones you don't mean to do, start with a thought. If you have decided in advance what is right and wrong, you can avoid acting impulsively by being always aware of the direction of your thoughts. And most of us, if we're paying attention, we know when our thoughts are going in a negative way. And it's up to us to kind of redirect, like a captain of the ship, take that big wheel and redirect that tiny little rudder to turn that big ship, our thoughts, in a different direction. So we don't open our mouth or do something that will bring harm to ourselves, others, or the environment. All right. So it says there, it can leave you up the creek without a paddle. In other words, in a conflict, a crisis, a problem, without a solution. Because why? You just made a spur-of-the-moment decision. Now, why did you make a spur-of-the-moment decision? Probably skipped that class on controlling your thoughts, controlling your emotions, right? About not acting impulsively in the peaceful solution. So you didn't have the education to stop and think, as we should do with all decisions, to stop and think what is the best option so that we can proceed with the right choice. So you see the young man there in the boat, surrounded by, I can't remember if it's crocodiles or alligators. I know you can tell by the snout. Either way, they can bite you. But you see his paddle's gone, right? He made a spur-of-the-moment decision. Who knows? Possibly he saw the crocodile and he got scared and threw his paddle, tried to hit him. Well, that was a bad decision, right? You should have used your paddle to try to get away from the crocodiles, right? They don't like to taste the boats too much, but they do like to taste the legs. From what I understand, they say it tastes like chicken. Let's see, a person lacking self-control, discipline, and consistency is likely to make irresponsible choices that can lead to embarrassment, danger, or worse. A person, like we mentioned before, you could actually lose your life in some of these instances, right? Being irresponsible, not practicing self-control, not showing discipline, and not being consistent, it can actually cause a person to lose their life as a result, or cause them to take the life of another person because of their irresponsibility. Read the following scenario about a man who paid a heavy price for not maintaining a responsible character. Now this is entitled One Time is Too Many, and this is, before we do that here, I want to just show you something hopefully you can see it on the overhead there. This is from, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Epictetus. Nobody? No one went to high school with him? Okay. He was a Stoic philosopher from way back in the day, though. And he said, and we've mentioned this in the class before, circumstances don't make the man, they only reveal him to himself. All right? And we're going to see here what a little bit of that in this scenario here under one time is too many. So let's look down here on page 83. We're at the bottom. It says, Henry was a law-abiding citizen, notice here, until he lost his job. Now, instead of making a responsible choice to find another job, or he could have borrowed money, he could have asked a family member or friend for help. There are many other options he could have chose. He decided to rob a convenience store. He was arrested and tried for his crime. The day he was sentenced to 10 years in prison, the judge asked him if he had any final words. With tears and great regret, Henry said, "But I've never broken the law before. I only did it that one time." Well, the judge, shaking his head, replied, "One time is all it took for you to become a thief." Now, he might not have realized it at that time, but and I don't know if he did it all, but, there was a flaw in his character where he thought it was acceptable to steal from somebody else just because his circumstances in his mind deemed it acceptable. But remember, morality stays the same across any circumstance we might be in. Okay. And you know, it's really sad because this is sick. I think in a survey from 2000, I think it was 2019, you know, they showed that I think it was like 13,000 robberies took place, I believe, in the United States. 13,000 convenience store robberies took place, and 7,700 robberies took place at gas stations. So a little over 20,000 convenience store / gas station robberies took place. And most people don't realize it, but the average dollar loss at a convenience store or a gas station is like $770 to $1,600. That is it, right? I mean, it's not life-changing money, you know? And people literally, the consequence of throwing their life now, you know, he's got a 10-year prison sentence. Sure, he might get out a little bit earlier for great behavior, but then he's going to be on, you know, parole for a period of time afterwards, and there's going to be certain restrictions, not to mention now he's got a record that's going to follow him. You know, did he just rob someone? Did he use a weapon? Was it armed robbery? Did someone get hurt in the process? Right? There's a lot of different things to consider. Was there property damage as well? There are certain crimes are tried based on the value of what's damaged or stolen or taken, right? So in the end, it's not really worth it, right? I'm sure he would much rather have had his freedom. All right, let's look over to page 84 there as we continue on looking at some more examples. And at the very top there, this says, it is a fact that in our society, making even one irresponsible choice could change the outcome of your life. Now read the following article and answer the questions that follow. And this is called Transcending the Wall. And this is from a point of view from a man named Michael here. It says, on August 11th, 1987, I was arrested. It was the beginning of the end of nearly 2 years in the drug trade. All that followed was a long trial and a 45-year prison sentence. I was 19 then. I am 37 now. Most of my adult life and most of my maturing have taken place behind prison walls. Like many other adolescents, I was lured into the drug trade by promises of immediate riches and fun times. I had been working for my father since I was a child, and when I was as young as 6, he took me with him to the construction sites. He just wanted me beside him. I spent each summer going to work, either with him or with his employees. By the time I was 17, I knew the business well. I worked every day after school and had loads of responsibility. It was around that time that I was attracted to the easy life offered by large-scale drug trafficking. I lost my discipline, and as a result, I lost my freedom. Okay, and this is sad and commonplace among many people throughout the world today, not just the United States, but throughout the world today. And this is how appealing these things are. It's a lure. And you know what you use a lure for? To catch a fish, right? Or to catch something. But that's what it is. It's something that's dangled in front of people. And these guys, they know what they're doing. The ones that are, the big timers in the drug trade, they're driving flashy cars. They're wearing expensive watches and shoes. They've always got the women. They have the greatest parties, right? They've got big wads of cash and so forth. So yeah, that's gonna be alluring to a young man, especially if he's in an environment where he might be involved with poverty or not have many opportunities, right? And those are the areas that they target. Now, it's not just that, because there's a lot of very wealthy people that are involved in the drug trade too. And a lot of those guys, you find out they get into that because they're bored. There's nothing exciting, right? So the excitement of doing something illegal and not getting caught, that gives them an adrenaline rush, okay? But many people get hurt as a result of the activities that they're involved in. Many people die every year from drug overdoses. Now I think this latest thing is now fentanyl's been a big problem for the last few years in the United States. It's been an ever-growing problem. I think back in 2020, I think somewhere around in there was just a tremendous amount of an uptick of deaths due to fentanyl overdoses, which is a synthetic, I believe it's a synthetic opioid. Very powerful, so many hundreds of times stronger than morphine. But people are getting their hands on this and they're using this. Now they're lacing fentanyl with a horse tranquilizer. I don't remember the name right offhand, but they call it it's a fentanyl and they say trank, but it's a tranquilizer. Well, one of the results of that thing is it's causing a bacteria, a flesh-eating, a skin-eating bacteria to surface on the people who are using it. You know, and I've seen a couple of videos and images and people, they've got these big boils and these rashes and their skin is kind of peeling. Half the time they don't even know it, right? They don't need, because they're so out of it, they don't even really know that they're not only killing themselves, but their body is wasting away as a result of this. Why? For an easy high, right? An easy escape. And, you know, and I'm not condemning these people because, you know, it's a matter of education and so forth, but this is how much worse is getting. You know, you never hear something, well, you know, the drug scene is getting a lot better now, right? The drugs are safer, right? They're healthier for people, not as many overdoses. You don't hear that. You don't hear those types of things. That's like saying, you know, people are now doing better and getting permission before they steal things. It doesn't work that way. It's an oxymoron, right? Those things need to be eliminated completely off the streets. You know, and a lot of times, sadly, people are introduced to these things in a legal way. They go for an operation, they have some type of injury, they get some type of surgery, and then they're put on a very powerful opioid. And all the doctors, the medical profession know this is addictive, right? And what occurs? Well, they can't stop. They've actually got an addiction to it. The pain's long gone, but now they're addicted to the opioid. But that's a conversation for a whole nother time. But these are the problems that people are facing. And here with this young man here, well, he was young at the time, you know, 19 years old in prison, you know, and you can see through this story here, part of what caught his mind was the promise of immediate riches and fun times. Immediate riches and fun times. And then it says here, notice the character of his father. You know, his father obviously knew the environment that they were living in. And it seems like, based on the little bit we're given here, he was doing what he could to protect his son. He wanted him to be with him so that he could work, he could be out of the streets, he could learn to develop a trade, a skill, where he could actually generate an income so he wouldn't have to go and look for alternative means of an income, right? Where he could be responsible, develop a responsible character. And the man even testified of his own self. By the time he was 17, he knew the business well. And I'm sure in his father's mind, eventually he would turn the business over to his son. Now, this process of growing and developing a skill and learning a business and learning all the different aspects and trades and how to do things, you know what? It takes time, right? But people in today's day and age, right now, here we are in the 21st century, they don't want to wait. They want it right now, right? You ask some of these young people, what do you want to do? Well, I want to become a YouTuber. I'm going to make $100,000 a month YouTubing. I'm going to be doing pranks. You know, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Right? Some people have lost their lives. I seen a video in Russia where some guy was doing a prank for views, you know, popping out of a trash can. And I guess things are a little bit different in Russia. And somebody, you know, fired off a couple shots in the trash can. The guy was scared, right? That guy lost his life. And many people have lost their lives in other means with these extreme stunts and so forth. But it's like there's no substance to their goals, right? They're just kind of lofty, but with no plan to get there. And at the end of the day, you know, you can't maintain a life eating and drinking off of YouTube. You know, we've got to have people to grow our food and to, you know, do all these other industries, these conveniences that we so much desire, but not many people are looking for that anymore. But anyway, here we see here the father, he actually wanted to protect his son, and he wanted him to be by his side, but something, an influence there, an influence was presented to this young man that made him, that took his eyes off the focus that his father was really trying to work to keep his eyes on, that path that his father was trying to work. And so I'm kind of pointing this out to put it in your mind as a teacher that despite everything that you might try to do as a teacher, there might be some of your students who get their minds diverted. And it doesn't mean that you poorly taught them. It doesn't mean that you failed in your job. It just means that there was a desire in their heart greater for what was presented to them than what you were presenting to them, right? So only reason I say it is because it can be disheartening as a teacher. We've had some students who, gone through the course and they were really great and they end up back up in prison. And it's like, what were you doing? You know these things, right? But sometimes it's emotions they get involved with it. They saw somebody who did them wrong and it triggered something and they retaliated and they end up getting caught. Sometimes they're, scared or whatever the case might be. So just keep that in mind. This father was doing the best he can, but this young man was attracted to the easy life. And notice in your book there, that's in quotations, because anything worth having, anything worth acquiring, it's worth striving for. It's worth working hard for. It's worth putting the time and the effort to acquire it. And you're so much more appreciative of it when you put your, as they say, blood, sweat, and tears into it, and then you get it. You're more thankful. You're more appreciative than just somebody just handing it to you, right? And so that can be the allure, and we've got to train the young men and women to, hey, listen, there are going to be a lot of things that appeal easy to you, but really you should ask yourself, why is it so easy? What are the consequences, the potential consequences that are attached to this if I engage in this? Is it risk-taking? Is it immoral? Right? Is it legal? If you got to sneak around and do it, it probably isn't. And that's one of the things that if you look up any articles now, they're actually targeting a lot more youth, typically people between the ages of, 11 through 15, 16 years old, for drug traffickers, because they know that they can get a lighter sentence as a result of it, and they're usually just the fronts behind bigger players in the matter. But it's a growing problem, especially here in the United States, but I'm sure all over the world. Let's look at the very bottom there on page 84, and here's a couple questions, 3 questions to go with the scenario that we just read under Transcending the Wall. So Michael was taught responsibility, right? He was taught it. Was Michael taught responsibility? And then it gives the student the opportunity to explain the answer, and then you can see, of course, yes. His father took him to work with him as young as 6 years old and taught him the business. Okay, so he was in an environment being trained by his father so he could be taught responsibility. And like he said, I had loads of it. His father trusted him, obviously, with a lot of different things. Number 2, what irresponsible choice did Michael make? Well, he chose the easy life and began drug trafficking. I mean, that's the thing, People say, well, why would I go and work at a restaurant for, $4.25 an hour? Now, that was probably back in the 90s. I think you're making $20 an hour now working at a restaurant. $20 an hour now. Shoot, I'm going to quit my job and go work at a restaurant while I'm dealing with corporate America, But why would I go and work at a restaurant for $4.25 an hour? That's what it was when I was going to school. When I can go and make $425 in 5 minutes, or an hour, $425 in an hour. Why would I want to go and do that, right? And so the logic in their mind was, that's silly. But what occurs when they get caught? All it takes is one time. Now you're making 25 cents an hour, making license plates. Well, I don't think anybody makes license plates. banging out license plates anymore. There might be some prisons that still actually do it. A lot of prisons still use that. A lot of prisons are a privatized thing now. Many of them are, and they use a lot of the labor there to run businesses, oddly enough. And so, what describe in number 3? Describe the consequences of Michael's choice. So he was taught responsibility. He made an irresponsible choice. Now, what was the consequences of his choice? Well, he was arrested for selling drugs and sentenced to 45 years in prison. And notice that at the end there, he lost his freedom. And I bet you he thinks about it every day, or thought about it every day, you know, and if he could, he would have chosen differently. I'm 99% sure of that. Most people don't say, yeah, I would have sold drugs again. You know, it was a great life. It was an easy life. No, I bet you they would want their freedom. Most people would have chosen differently. Well, that's the problem. Not everybody gets this information so that they can see both sides of the coin. And this is the privilege that a person has when they come to one of these peaceful solution classes, because now they're being shown both sides of the coin. They're being shown the rewards and the consequences, the right and the wrong, the great and the bad, and how when they make certain decisions, they're going to come, their decision is the cause of something that's going to be in effect later in their life. Now, all they have to do is ask themselves, do I want a reward or do I want a consequence later? Well, you're in a lot of control of that based on the decisions you make now. Well, what's going to help you to make better decisions? Getting educated, getting yourself the facts, getting control of your emotions so you don't make impulsive choices and so forth. So that when you do make a choice, at the end of the day, when you're going back over, you can say, you know what? I think I handled that well, right? I stopped and I thought about it, and I made a decision that was in the best interest for everybody. It was moral. It kept the rules. It didn't bring harm to anybody. It didn't bring shame or embarrassment to myself or anybody else, right? And that's the kind of things you want to have as you reflect, or as they reflect, or as we reflect on ourselves, our choices, our actions at the end of the day. All right, so let's look at page 85 here. And this is kind of wrapping up procedure 5 here. And it's, I believe this is a poem, One Bad Choice. And it says, if yesterday could have let me see where this choice would have led me, I would not have done the things I had done, for one bad choice hurts everyone. I thought that I could play the drug game. Instead, I caused my parents shame. It is my life now. I stand alone. I did not consider my family at home. The tears that came to my mother's eyes rang as loud and clear as my brother's cries. How could I have been so blind to think my crimes I could leave behind? So here I sit behind steel bars. My friends and family are now so far. Knowing now what I've done was a bad choice that hurt everyone. And that's something else that people don't think about when they're chasing the easy life. They're going after immediate riches and fun times, is they don't think about how their choices will affect other people. Remember, a choice or an action or a word is like a pebble dropped in a pond. It creates a ripple, right? And those words, those actions, they're going to affect not only you, but other people as well. And people don't think about that. Well, if I get caught, you know, I'll go to jail. I just sit my time out, or whatever the case might be. What about your mom or your dad or your brother or sister or your wife or your child if you have a child? Now they're without that support system that they depend on and that they need for who knows however long a time. Now you've left them vulnerable to perpetrators and so forth to come in and take advantage of them. And many times people do, right? Or to try to defend for themselves. And so we have to think and get our students to think more than just beyond their own nose. Because as was mentioned in previous lessons, we are interdependent. The things we do affect and impact the lives of those around us, just like the things that other people do affect and impact our lives personally. And then at the very bottom there to the left-hand side, it says, not maintaining a responsible character is like playing in traffic. It can be dangerous and unpredictable. And that's what a lot of people do with their lives, right? They call it flying by the seat of their pants, living life on the edge, welcome to the danger zone, whatever the case might be. But those are impulsive, spur of the moment patterns of thinking that leads to consequences that, like we just said, just read two examples. Both men were sentenced to jail for a choice that they made just one time and not considering the consequences of those things. And it's just that easy for people to get in these pickles, so to speak, because they don't think about it. Well, part of the reason a lot of people don't think about it is because the excitement of the reward, right? The riches, the fast cars, whatever the case might be, is more appealing and desirable to them than the quiet, peaceful, humble thing of developing and maintaining a positive character. Nobody wants to do that. It's like just going and standing, after you get a little bit of age underneath your belt. Sometimes some of the most peaceful things is just, standing in a field. You find yourself standing there or off on the side of the road or in your front yard and just feeling the breeze just come across on a warm summer day and listening to the air pass through the trees, the wind pass through the trees, and just a moment of quietness. That's peaceful. You don't have to have the fast cars and all the big wads of cash and the gold money and you won't see anybody in this class coming in with a big PS sign wrapped around their neck, hanging from a big gold chain. I pray we don't ever see any of that, because that's not the glamour. The peaceful solution does not teach glamour. It teaches honor, right? And developing an honorable character. That's more to be desired than anything else than the silver and gold. In fact, with an honorable character, it can actually help you to get that if you want it, but you get it in a way that doesn't bring harm to yourself or others. You get it in a way that doesn't take from others in the process, and it helps you. And in that process, you maintain a responsible character. We played a video at the one-day event this summer, spring conference, educational conference, and one of the videos we showed was of a gentleman who immigrated from Iran, and he got into the food hospitality industry, and some years later, his business had grown to over 400 stores, employing over 40,000 people, right? And the amount of money that's paid out in payroll and taxes and support for the community, it was very great, right? But he didn't do it by taking advantage of people. He didn't do it by stealing or robbing, right? He did it in an honorable and respectful way, and that rippled out, that desire and that choice, doing it using morality, rippled out, and it affected people in his environment, even people he's probably never even met, in a positive way, them and their families. So this is the thing we want to get our students' minds on and thinking about what they do now and how it's going to affect their future. We want them to think about their future, but we want them to think about right now, because what they do, how they set their minds, what they're influenced by, and the choices that they make, whether they're responsible or irresponsible, will determine the outcome of their future later on. Well, we're going to stop right there, and we'll pick up on page 86 next class. Next class will be this upcoming, was it the 10th? Yeah, Wednesday the 10th at 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you for coming, and have a wonderful evening.